Hi everyone, Sheena here with Evolved Being. Today we are talking about relationships. I did start a little mini series, however, I did take a little while to post this third episode because I've been moving. So, quick little update about myself. I'm on a little path of moving into some new zones and shifting, and today I am in my new little studio that I'll be recording in for the next few months. So, I'm happy to be here. And I'll be making my videos a little bit more frequently again. But we are just going to pick up where we left off, and I'd like to recap a little bit. I started this series talking about relationships and really defining the word relationship and how we tend to like maybe bulk up all our relationships into one category where we could say that there's many different categories to relationships, and they're different, right? They're not all the same. The romantic relationship is not the same as our parental relationship. I use that one because that really sets the tone, right? We know they're different. Our friendships are different than our relationships with our siblings. And sometimes they are the same, actually. And sometimes we're in relationships with people that feel like our siblings or have become our like tribe or people, and our sibling relationships are not the same. So, it's all kind of mixed up into this one sort of idea about relationships. But the reason I like talking about them and the reason I'm opening the stage to speak about them today is because relationships are a foundation for us. They build our character, they teach us who we are. There are two relationships. One I talked about in the second episode, the relationship to the self, and then the relationship to divinity, which I haven't talked about yet. But those two relationships are kind of these different style relationships because they don't really require two human beings. It's more of the self is the inner self and who we are, and being able to communicate with what we need and what we want to from others, and how we want to show up in the world. And the divine relationship is differs from person to person, and many religions, it's a really important relationship. It's sort of the first relationship, right? Especially in Christianity, it's that relationship that sets the tone for all other relationships. So there's a lot of different things going on with relationships, and what is it exactly, relating to the self, relating to others, being able to engage with ourselves, being able to engage with others, being able to prioritize, being able to set boundaries. There's a lot going on within there. So that's what we've talked about so far in this series. And what we are talking about today is relationships to our friends and our family. And I just put those ones together because, like I said, a lot of times it's, especially in our day and age around my world, a lot of people refer to it as tribe, or, your family that you made up along the way. That happens. And I think that's totally, makes sense. So it doesn't have to be your blood relatives, although I do have something to say about that that we'll get into a little bit. But they're the people that we're close to or that we're building and cultivating relationships. And they're also the people that push us and challenge us, which is what I was talking about those family blood relationships, where we're sort of like, wait, really, was I born into this family? Or you're the black sheep, or you have a black sheep in your family and you're like, I don't know how we're possibly related. And I truly believe those are the biggest challenges. And I think that's why it's so important to talk about the family relationships and the blood relationships. And I absolutely on the side that we don't always have to make friendships or family relationships with our blood relatives. Sometimes that's not the case. And sometimes it is the case. And sometimes it's a challenge to make it the case. And sometimes we were born with a sister or a brother who are our soulmate already. So, it's different for everyone. But I think the main things I want to focus on is how to maintain, how to manage, how to evolve um, relationships that are challenging. Because I think that a lot of times they are there to teach us things. And boundaries is one of those things, because it is hard to have a challenging relationship. It's hard to be in relationship with a close family member or with a friend that's hurt us or with, let's say, um, a circumstance that has hurt us where we still have to remain friends with someone, whether that be an ex partnership and a co-parenting situation or an ex friendship where a friend is still a friend of a friend and you still have to see that friend. you know I think that those are the challenging ones because you're like, it's like, why add suffering to our lives by not working to those places of forgiveness and understanding and compassion? And I think that's what I'm talking about here. And like I said, this is not every case scenario. And I'm not saying that everybody needs to um, make friends and family members closer to them if they've hurt them or caused pain or suffering in their life. That is absolutely not true. And I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying in those little questionable ones where you're like, I could do the forgiving, I could let this go, I could work to move into, or I have a feeling deep inside me that I am supposed to be closer to this person, but it is a little bit hard. Or I am supposed to let go of something, but it is a little bit hard. That's the place I'm talking about. Those are the situations that I'm really focusing in on in terms of relationship. And why would we care to do those things? And I think it has a lot to do with our character, with our perseverance, with our ability to strengthen those deep rooted values in ourselves, like unconditional love and being in high frequencies of joy and in enjoyment and kindness and compassion and understanding. And it takes a while to get there, especially if we've been hurt. So if we've been hurt, right, the thing to do is process that hurt, to work through that pain. And that might mean stepping away from people in our lives for long periods of time. But over time, as we grow strong and confident and really work to get on the side of taking responsibility for everything that happens in our lives, then we are able to set into this different mindset where we're able to say, hey, I see what happened. I don't know that I can let you fully back into my life. However, I forgive you. Because forgiveness is about ourselves and our relationship to ourselves and our relationship to spirit. And also, it sets the stage for the people around us to also make those sorts of high value choices, right? And that's something that gives us the ability to then be in relationship with more people. We're extending those arms. It has a lot to do with the closed heart, right? If we have portions of ourselves that are very closed off, and I'm not talking about boundaries here, boundaries are a little bit more about setting the tone for how you need to be treated and how you treat yourself, but closing off the heart. When we close off the heart, we lose portions of what's behind those closed portions of our heart that are high potential, that are ability to create. Those are gives us ability to be joyful and compassionate and forgiving on to those higher level values. So we've got to figure out that stuff so that we can open the heart back up and live with an open heart. When we live with that open heart, right, we're going to have the highest potential for good, healthy relationships in our lives. Second thing, these are a little bit of hard truths. And I didn't know I was going to go into this today, but here I am. I'm talking about it. So here we are. We have to look at ourselves. We have to bring awareness to our lifestyles. If all of our relationships, friends and family, in those cases, in that sort of category, tend to cause harm to us or have challenged us in heavy ways, a lot of times we do have to look back at our heart and we have to say, okay, what is it that I'm doing? Where am I standing? How am I showing up? And how could I shift that differently so that people around me treat me, portray the me that I want to be, right? So and that's hard. That's not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes a lot of inner work. And then going back to that episode 2, that relationship to the self, that's where that relationship to the self is cultivated. And then when that relationship is cultivated very well, right? And you have high communication there, you have high self-love, you have high self-awareness, right? When you go out into the world, the people around you that aren't going to vibe with that, they're just not going to be there. That's really the way that works, right? And then you're looking at the world where you're seeing the beauty in all the people around you. And I think that challenge is when you're affected by others. And let's use an example in a family setting, right? Let's say you have an aunt, right, that has been around the family for a long time, that has continuously wreaked havoc on the family or has been difficult, or when that person comes around to family gatherings, they tend to create drama. I mean, I know we all have someone in our families like that, right? How we respond to that drama also affects their sort of capacity to give that drama or to create that drama. And I know that's a lot, right? That seems like a high responsibility. But as we gain self awareness, it becomes a lot easier to just sort of deflect that energy. And it doesn't mean we have to push that person away or be rude to that person. Now, it doesn't mean we can answer the phone every time they call and help them out of trouble every time either, because that is where the boundaries come in. But when we show up in a family gathering, or we show up and we, to something where they're around, where we might interact with them, then we're able to not be harmed by that. And I think that's the bigger sort of picture. And once we're able to do that, we're able to give more love from a place of like love, rather than a place of like, I have to do this because I'm a family member, if that makes sense. So those are the challenging, right? That's an example of a challenge. I know we all can kind of resonate a little bit with something like that. So those relationships, I think, grow us. They teach us. They teach us the truth is not everyone's perfect in this world, and we're born into these families, or we're in these friends groups, or we've had these challenges growing up with the same people, or we meet new people and we learn how to interact with them because we're supposed to, because there's something there to learn. And that, to me, is how the relationships in the family and the friend category go. They grow us, they teach us to be strong, loyal characters in this world. And yeah, we don't always agree with other people, but sometimes we're forced to have to figure out how to. And it seems like it's the friends and the family members that do us in the most when it comes to that. And to me, that's huge opportunity for growth. That's huge opportunity for learning. That's huge opportunity to practice our values, to practice who we are, to practice how we show up in this world. And that to me is like the goodness. That is the awesomeness. And when we're going through it, sometimes it doesn't feel that way. But when we get to look back on it and we get to reflect and we get to sort of assign the weight of our character and our values becoming stronger to the places of us that need it, we become more whole and we grow. And we get to project that back out into the world, and we get to vibrate that frequency back out into the world, which only creates more and more of that. So in terms of relationships in the category of friends and family, I love that. I think there's so much to be examined there. I think there's so much to be understood and so much to be learned and so much compassion to be built in that area of relationships. And I do believe it's a bit synchronistic. It's on purpose, if anything, that we are in those situations, that we are born into families, that we are around people in the way that we are put in those places, that those people were put in front of us. And we'll end it on the more positive lookout as, the bonds we make with our friends, the healthy bonds we make with our family members, those go on to teach our children, to teach our children's friends, to grow more love inside of us, to vibrate more love in our work spaces and our romantic relationships, in our inner relationships, and our relationships with spirit. And I think that's cool. So when we do have those healthy, strong bonds with people, Yeah, that's goodness, right? That's goodness. That's constant projection out into the world. Even a strong, healthy, loving bond with an animal, that's vibrating outward. That's giving more love into this pool of love, and it's teaching more about the evolution of love in our world and being in a good space to invite love into our lives. And the more love in our lives, the better. That's what I think. So that's what I have to talk about today. I will maybe make one more note because I did mention unconditional love. Um, I do think unconditional love is about, and the last episode I want to work on is a relationship to spirit. I think unconditional love is a little bit more focused on a spiritual love. And I don't think that anybody should be expected or held to the standard of unconditionally loving every person until they've gotten to a space in their life where spirit love is like number one, and you've learned to sort of live and walk that path the majority of the time. Only because human life in material form, uh, it has conditions all the time. We're constantly living in a world of conditions, and there's very rare people that could sort of live in this metaphysical bubble. Maybe some monks, in the Himalayas, or maybe some very specific gurus that have sort of gotten to that state, or people that are like, what I think about maybe Jesus or Buddha or these sorts of just very high vibrational beings. But for the majority of us, unconditional love is an ideal to sort of set the tone for what we eventually would like to get to. It's not necessarily meaning we need to unconditionally love every single person that's standing in front of us. Um, we need to set boundaries. We need to let people know what we can handle and what we can't handle. And we need to step away sometimes if people are not respecting those boundaries, and we need to go inward and figure out how to place ourselves in better experiences and create a better attractor field. But for the most part, the unconditional love is like a value. It's like an underlying system that says, okay, I'm always going to come back to compassion in my heart. And it's never to make us feel bad if we get angry or frustrated with others, or we lose a relationship, or we make a mistake, or we hurt someone, or we get hurt by someone. That's all just part of life. That's just part of how this goes. Holding on to it, creating grudges, never working on ourselves, doing harm to others. That's on the other side of the spectrum. And if that's the case that we're moving towards, or that we have moved towards, then we really do need to rein it in and look at ourselves. But for the majority of us, making mistakes along the way, not being compassionate, getting in a fight, even screaming or crying or getting frustrated with our relationships, that's just a part of life. And we will do that over and over again. And the better we get at reflecting, and the better we get at being mindful in the moment, and the better we get at being responsive versus reactive, and the better we get at being self aware, and the better we get at taking responsibility versus being the victim, we're going to start to grow into those higher value, ideal, unconditional love spaces. But, you know, if you're to get there, that's a very specific path. For the majority of us, it's just about learning and growing and evolving into these better spaces so we can live a more joyful and loving life. And that's it. So that is what I have for you today. Next episode, I'm going to do romantic relationships because I love love and romance. And yeah, you have a beautiful day. Thanks for tuning in. My new space. Life is good. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Once again, I am Sheena with Evolved Being.